Chapter 12. SOCA. Yvonne picked up her grey trench coat and made for the door. "I'm off to see Mrs. Jones in Dolver. I'll probably be about half an hour," she said to Derry on her way out. "Would you like me to come with you?" He made to follow her. She turned back briefly. "It's okay, Derry. I'm sure Mrs. Jones won't bite me. I'll be fine by myself. What I would like you to do, however, is chase up the blood spot we found on the magazine. Find out if the DNA cross-checks with any DNA on file. You never know, it could be the jackpot." "Will do, Ma'am." Derry held the door open for her. "Don't get distracted by anyone dangerous," he grinned. "Oi, less of your cheek," Yvonne grinned back. "I'll have my mace with me." She held up the can to him, and he backed off in mock horror. Mrs. Jones had made a pot of tea in anticipation of the DI's arrival, the latter having phoned in to check the visit would be okay. The older woman was dressed casually today, in blue jeans and a cream jumper. The clothes still managed to look smart on her thin frame. Yvonne, on the other hand, had thrown together her attire that morning. She had grabbed a white cotton blouse which, though clean, had not been ironed, and the tartan skirt. She was still wearing her coat when she sat down. Mrs. Jones handed her a cup and saucer, eyeing the DI's Mac as though unsure whether she should offer to take it. Yvonne accepted the tea, placing down the saucer and holding the cup between both hands, appreciating the warmth. She blew on the hot liquid. "Mrs. Jones, I've brought photographs of a girl I'd like you to see. Would it be all right for me to get them out?" "Photographs? Of course. Are they photographs of the girl I saw in the village the other day?" Yvonne nodded. "We believe they might be, but I'd like you to take a thorough look, and if it is not her, or you are not sure, please tell me." The DI leaned over the small coffee table and spread the few photographs which Donna's friend Lisa had supplied from social media. Mrs. Jones took her time, looking over each one carefully before finally pulling back. "It's her," she tapped one of the photographs emphatically, "and those are the clothes she was wearing when I saw her. Her name is Donna Fitzpatrick," Yvonne said, looking into the older lady's clear blue eyes. "We believe she was waiting for a bus to take her back to Llanidloes, a bus that would have gone via Newtown." Mrs. Jones slowly shook her head. "And she didn't get there?" "No, she didn't get there. Her friends reported her missing a couple of days later. You were probably the last person to see her besides her abductors." "Oh." Mrs. Jones twirled a handkerchief around in her fingers. Yvonne noticed dark shadows under her widened eyes. "I wanted to ask you if there's anything else you remember from that day. Anything, no matter how insignificant it might have seemed." "Well, I don't think so." At that moment, Mrs. Jones' Welsh accent sounded more pronounced. "What about the vehicles?" Mrs. Jones shook her head. "I didn't see any vehicles." "I know, but did any of the sounds stand out to you? Anything about any of the engines that might indicate the type of vehicle?" Mrs. Jones leaned forward, shaking her head. Yvonne was about to thank her for the tea and gather the photographs when Sheila narrowed her eyes. "No, wait, there was something. My knees were hurting and I was rearranging the cushion underneath them." "Go on." "I heard what could have been a sliding door on a van opening. The engine noise was soft, but I think it was probably a van." "You didn't remember this before?" "I guess not. I guess I tuned it out. Vehicles sometimes stop at the lay-by. I didn't hear a disturbance, though. No struggle. But then I guess I wasn't listening for one at the time." "We've spoken to your neighbours, Mrs. Jones, and no one else saw Donna. We're very grateful for you calling us. It is people like yourself that help us solve crimes." "Thank you." Yvonne rose from her seat, a soft smile lightening her face. "Oh, it's the least I could do. That poor girl." Sheila Jones' mouth curled downwards. "I hope you find her soon, and that she's unharmed." When Yvonne returned to the station, 2 men in suits were with the DCI. He was showing them around CID. Llewellyn smiled broadly and let out a puff of air when Yvonne strode in. "Ah, Yvonne, come on in. George Lucas and Mark Lyons are here from SOCA." "George, Mark, this is DI Yvonne Giles." The senior of the 2 men held out his hand for Yvonne to shake. She did so, meeting his relaxed and confident gaze with one of her own. George Lucas looked to be in his mid-50s. Hair thinning on top, he disguised a burgeoning middle-aged spread with an oversized suit jacket. He had a well-lined but kindly face. She mused to herself that his retirement probably was not that far away. His companion also stepped forward to shake her hand. About 20 years younger, Mark Lyons appeared to keenly observe what was going on around him. His head would fly around at the slightest sound. He had the air of someone who constantly expects something to happen. George and Mark are here to familiarise themselves with what's been happening. Llewellyn flicked his head towards the window. As regards the missing children. Welcome. Pleased to meet you both, Yvonne murmured, resisting her strong urge to courtesy. Exactly how did one communicate with members of SOCA? You know we have witnesses to the abductions, 2 who saw the boy taken and 1 who saw the girl just before she was taken. Her gaze was cool and level. It belied her nervousness. George Lucas nodded. We'll need to talk with them as soon as possible. Can you arrange it? Sure. Unfortunately, we don't have CCTV. Yvonne pursed her lips. We know. Lucas looked around at Llewellyn and back again. We were just discussing that. We're locked in a battle with the council to have our CCTV reinstated, Yvonne added. Cost-cutting of all things. We know that too. And unfortunately, so do the kidnappers. Yvonne's eyes snapped up to Lucas. What? We think they know that the CCTV is off and that's how they're deciding where to hunt. They know which councils are not operating CCTV. Both her eyebrows were raised in surprise. Whoever this organisation is, they are very computer savvy. Yvonne rubbed her chin. We've had officers out combing the car park in Welshpool from which Carl Jenkins was abducted. They found nothing. They are not just computer savvy, they are extremely careful not to leave any trace of themselves. And they are operating on the dark web, Lyons chimed in, making it very difficult to trace them or their transactions. I thought that would be the remit of MI5. Llewellyn placed both hands in his pockets. Isn't that their territory? Lyons puffed out his chest. Oh, we do our fair share of digging around in there, believe me. But so far, nothing. So where do we fit in? Yvonne asked. I'm guessing you won't want us involved in that web stuff. That's right. Lucas perched on the edge of the desk, folding his arms. But you may be able to pinpoint the local snatch team. If we can identify one of the individuals, we'll have a way in. Of course, we can't act until we can identify them all and take them all down at the same time. We couldn't risk leaving anyone behind. Or harming the hostages, Yvonne's eyes narrowed. We have to remember these are children. They will be terrified and they're relying on us to help them. We can't let them down. Best not to get too involved emotionally, Lyons suggested. Yvonne felt patronised. She put both hands on her hips. Well, if that's all, I've got work to do. Llewellyn nodded his consent, and she left the room, concerned that her team's efforts would be stifled by the SOCA invaders. She mentally chastised herself for that thought.